generations. So anyway, we have the Roger DeCoster's entire collection, all of his bikes, his gear, all those old ABH leathers, jerseys, helmets, everything, and all the parts. I think we have over 250 of his trophies from the Grand Prix throughout his Hall of Fame career. We've got Joel Robert's bikes, we've got Bob Hurricane Hanna's bikes, Eric Gabor's, Heikki Mikkola's 1978 World Championship Yamaha, and so many more. We have about 125 historical factory works bikes. So anyway, let's get on to the topic of this video, the RN70. This bike here was Suzuki's first effort, first open class bike. It came out in the middle of 1970, that season, and it was developed in Japan, and most of the dimensions and basic specs were derived from all the work that Ole Peterson did with Suzuki in 1968 and 1970. The bike was designed by Hirohide Tamaki, who was the top engineer. He's still around. He's on our Facebook page periodically, and Hirohide designed all the factory motocross Suzukis from 1965 till around 1983. He's a very nice man, and he's a very smart man, and this is the work of Mr. Tamaki. So when he designed this, one of the things that was just premier in his approach was lightweight. And he told me once that he used to eat, sleep, and breathe thinking lightweight. He'd dream about how to make the bike lighter. And he used a lot of very unique, simple techniques to do that. And the one that really stands out to me on this bike is the lower triple clamp. It was sand cast in two pieces. It's hollow in the middle, and it has a real, you can hardly see the welding. It's so fine to hold the thing together, but it's extremely light, extremely strong, and the part was actually made by a company that made parts for the World War II Japanese Zero. So that's kind of a neat little tidbit. But when we got this bike, we bought it from Clive Bussey in England, and he found it in Holland, in pieces at a Suzuki dealership near Nimog, which was the headquarters for the factory Suzuki team at that time. Excuse me. Clive purchased all the stuff from them. It was nearly a complete bike, but it was actually missing a frame and other key parts. And Clive got drawings and photographs from Ole Peterson, and actually made scale drawings of, measured everything, the angles, made scale drawings, and made a frame for this bike, and put it all together, and he did a phenomenal job. But when we got it, or when we first agreed to buy it, I sent pictures of it to Joel Robert and to Sylvain Gabor's, and asked them. I told them I was getting it. First of all, they were extremely shocked that something like this even existed. And we were trying to figure out whose it was. And Clive had mentioned that second gear was blown out on the bike. And so it could have been Ole Peterson's, Joel Robert, or Sylvain Gabor's. They were the only three guys that had these things, and they each only had one. Ole Peterson was eliminated right away because Ole shifts on the right. This here, you can see the brake pedals on the right. So it was either between Joel and Sylvain. Joel Robert blew second gear out of one of his bikes, or out of his bike, and so that was what we used to determine if it was his. Other things came up subsequent to that time, but then we went on a massive search for a frame. The fenders were wrong. We found those, found a frame. The exhaust pipe Clive made to scale, that's this. He did a phenomenal job. Um, so the bike is basically it's pretty much all original. Another thing it's missing is the front wheel had these steel rings around the perimeter of the hub. And so Joel was breaking hubs and spokes were coming loose. So you might have noticed those steel rings on the hubs of the later Suzukis. They were silver in color. People think they were titanium or aluminum. Most of the time they were steel. But anyway, Joel was the one that had those complaints initially, and the Suzuki engineers came up with that, with these rings. They're not on these hubs. And if you look at any archive photographs, you'll see those rings. They'll be black, but you'll see those rings on the hubs. The motor is completely sand cast in aluminum instead of magnesium that the later ones were. So these have aluminum sand cast crankcases. It has a 4-speed gearbox, and it is a 360, whereas the other ones, the later ones, were 370s. This one has a 79 millimeter bore and a 73 millimeter stroke, which puts it right at under 360 cc's. The other ones had an 80 and slightly larger bore. The same basic design stayed with this bike. It was refined as it, progressed from year to year. So you had the RN71 that also had a 4-speed gearbox, but it was all magnesium everywhere, and it was a little bit lighter. And this displacement, the bore was bumped to 80 millimeters from 79. In 72, well, they hired Roger in 1971. He won the world championship with it. And then for 72, one of his recommendations was that they go to a 5-speed gearbox. And so for 72, they took his advice and went to the 5-speed. And we actually have an RN72 as well. And then the RN73 is a refined RN72, only the FIM with huge pressure from Mako and others changed the rules and put a weight limit on. These bikes were extremely lightweight. This one's just a shade over 200 pounds. The advantage, Joel Robert told me, he said, and he was referring mostly to his 250 than the open class bike here, but he told me that the biggest advantage, or the two advantages to weight that they gave him is at the end of a 45-minute moto, he was a lot fresher than he was if the bike was a lot heavier. So it was a lot easier to wrestle around, and it didn't cause a lot of fatigue. The other thing, and the most notable thing, at least to me, was he said with the extreme lightweight of these factory Suzukis, that he could put the bike anywhere at any time on the track with just body English, so to speak. So he said that was the biggest advantage to the lightweight. And Roger has told me, DeCoster, that the bikes would get better traction when they were lighter, and they handled better. There was all kinds of, just the advantages were huge. In fact, he said on his RN72, he felt like he could start last place in every race and still finish first. That's what an advantage the bike was. But they got banned. There were rumors about these, that there was all this aerospace material. They were very expensive bikes. no doubt about that. Each one was made by hand. There's nothing on this bike that wasn't touched by hand. But the other factories felt Suzuki had an unfair advantage that they couldn't keep up with, and by using all these exotic materials. And they did use some exotic materials, but it wasn't like what the rumors were. And Suzuki wasn't going to give away their secrets as to what they did. But here we are, 50 years later, and the secrets were just extremely clever engineering. And Mr. Tamaki is to be credited for that, and the other Suzuki engineers, in all fairness. But everything was very cleverly designed for minimum weight. You take apart the motor, I mean, there's just nothing there. The kickstart spring and that whole mechanism is in the crankcases, and they use nylon spacers in between the rear axle and the backing plate. Swing arms aluminum. The frames are very light, but they're chrome moly. The frames weigh about 16 pounds, I think. Anyway, it's a very cleverly and well thought out motorcycle. And the other thing that all the Suzuki riders will give extremely high accolades to the Suzuki engineers, in that anything that was needed, any complaint, any modification that was needed, it was done instantly. Joel it was his first time to Japan testing these bikes, and he told me that the pegs were in the wrong position, the parts were breaking, and he wanted this or that, just minor adjustments. He said the bike was pretty much right there, but he wanted minor adjustments, and that was after his first day of testing. And then he comes back to the factory the next day, and there's the bike with all the modifications done. And he said it was just amazing the way they weren't used to that. The CZ factory, it might take 6 months to make something. Same with Husqvarna and probably with Mako as well. So the Japanese really came into the sport with a whole different attitude. It was a real cohesive plan. The engineers were all on the same page. They all, that was their job, was to win, and they did win. And this was the start of it right here. Another neat little tidbit about the RN and RH Suzuki series is when Joel first went to Japan in, I believe it was January of 1970, the bikes had blue frames, silver gas tanks, and I think they had the white fenders still, but they were blue and silver. And Joel suggested that they paint them yellow and black. And he told me that story a long time ago, and I was like, I don't know if he's the one. Really? And I recently got a magazine, Moto Verte, with an article about all of this. And sure enough, it bears that out. Joel Roberto was the guy that suggested they paint the factory bikes yellow. And anyway, this was the start of the whole thing. Here's the bike, and this is the start of one of many videos that we'll be making. So thanks for tuning in, and I hope you learned a little bit and hope you enjoyed it. Thanks a lot. Bye.